Hi everybody, Griffin Hales here with Electric Bike Report, and today I'm very excited to bring you our review of the Aventon Aventure 2. Now, when the original Aventure debuted back in 2021, it really wowed us and largely reset the bar for what we thought was possible for an electric fat bike under $2,000. Now, this time around, Aventon has kept a lot of what worked so well with the original while adding some new and noticeable improvements that fundamentally change up the ride quality in very welcome ways. That starts with the inclusion of a torque sensor for a more natural pedaling experience and better battery efficiency. They've also made it possible for riders to have a speed profile that matches what they want if you want to be a little bit more aggressive and fast, or if you want it a little more tame and manageable. And then of course they've made very subtle tweaks to the look and the design that actually do help with safety. And of course it is still one of the most versatile e-bikes on the market today. There is a whole bunch to unpack with this review, so let's go ahead and take a deep dive into a look at the Aventon Aventure 2. Before we get to our overview of the Aventure 2, if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to our channel and don't forget to hit that notification bell. It'll alert you to any time we come out with new content and just keep you updated with everything that we're taking a look at here at EBR. Now, moving back here to the Aventure 2, it's important to understand that when this bike first debuted, it really helped set a new bar for what we expected from fat tire e-bikes in this price point, and really any e-bike in this price point, to be honest. It was doing a lot of things that weren't necessarily common at the time. There was a lot of black and white displays. They gave you a color display, a lot of 7-speed drivetrains, and they gave you 8 gears instead. Hydraulic disc brakes, when even a lot of fat tire e-bikes were still just doing mechanical. It just kind of gave you like a complete and total package. Didn't really leave you wanting for much more. It's one of the reasons it's long been one of our most recommended e-bikes here at Electric Bike Report. Now, the good news is Aventon has still been able to make meaningful improvements to what was already a great bike. They have had sold, I believe they said, about 300,000 bikes to date, and they do have a key advantage that they talked to us about in the marketplace. They actually own their own factory and manufacture the bikes themselves. That allows them to actually tinker with and make improvements without substantially increasing costs, which of course flow down to the consumer anyway. So the good news is this bike is still under $2,000, and as of this filming actually closer to $1,900, so it's still a pretty good total package value that we really like. Now, part of the feedback they've gotten from all of their customers is, let's make it a better, more natural ride experience. And that's maybe the biggest key feature here on the Aventure 2. The addition of a torque sensor is going to fundamentally change how this bike feels. When you have a cadence sensor e-bike, they can be a lot of fun, and if they're dialed in correctly, they can match your pedal and kind of desired traveling speed pretty well. But there's really just no replicating a torque sensor without actually equipping a torque sensor. The inclusion of that will better meet you where you're at. And what I mean by that is if you're a little bit more of an aggressive rider like me, you can go pretty fast, pretty quick, but you still feel like you're contributing to the process. There's more purpose in your pedal. And if you're someone who likes to kind of slow down and take it easy, it'll match you there too. But the entire time, if you're slower or if you're faster, it feels like you're helping to move the bike, which is just such a really good feel. And we're gonna come back to some more things that the torque sensor does, because it actually works some magic with the battery as well. But another thing to kind of move on to and like point out would just be the fact that it is still a very powerful and fun bike. It does very good on hills. And if you're the type of person who what I just described and always pedaling, feeling good, and you really don't want to pedal too much, you still have a very powerful, very useful throttle as well. It's just a pretty good overall package, making it so just about anyone can really enjoy riding around on the Aventure. Now, this is something that's kind of subjective, and I realize that, but the look of this bike is still amongst my favorites. When you just look at it, it's got very good, clean looks to it. It's a little bit more of a boxy or angular design here on the frames, but it's something that I love. Not only that, but Aventon's even giving you color options. This one here is their slate gray. They've also got a cobalt blue, midnight black, and camo green, I believe. I'll leave a link in the description where you can navigate to see all those different colors for yourself. But it's just a very good looking bike. Even moving down to the rear end here with the integrated taillights. Now beforehand there was just one on the left side. You now have lights on either chainstay, which increases visibility, but it also adds some functionality. This time around, Aventon has made it so you can operate those as turn signals. It's just a cool little feature and just an example of a little add-on that Aventon still looks at doing with the Aventure, which is just so awesome. Now, this bike still has a whole lot more going on, so we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into the full spec sheet. And just remember, anything that I might leave out, you can find the full comprehensive report back on the EBR website from the link below as well. Now, as we take a look at the overall spec package here, it's really kind of apparent that this is a bike that can be used by just about anybody. Matter of fact, in my own daily commute, when I take my kids to daycare and then come here to the office, I pass a guy in his 20s who rides around on an Aventure, and I pass an older couple who look like they're retirees who do a lot of riding, also on Aventures, but they're on the step-through model. It really is a bike that it's got such a good, compelling, and value-driven package that it can be ridden and enjoyed by just about anybody. Now let's go ahead and start with, of course, the star of any e-bike, which is the motor. It's a 750 watt rear hub motor. The peak is also capable of up to 1130 watts, I believe. And that pairs with Aventon's battery, which is of course housed here in the down tube. It is a very clean and integrated design. It is a 48 volt, 15 amp hour or 720 watt hour battery. Now, that is the same motor battery pairing that we saw in the previous Aventure, but this time around it's actually more efficient. It's a little bit more of the torque sensor magic, and I'm going to talk more in depth on that in our range test to come here in just a few minutes. Now, moving on to the safety of the bike, that starts, of course, with brakes. The brakes on this one are provided by Tektro HD E350 hydraulic disc brakes with 180 millimeter rotors. The previous bike that we tested had Bengal Aries brakes, and that performed and functioned really well, but I actually do kind of like seeing Tektro on here. It's just a little bit of a more common brand name, found in virtually every bike shop I've ever been to. I'm a big fan of these brakes overall. Now, talking gearing and the drivetrain, it's an 8-speed Shimano Altus. It's shifted pretty nice and reliably. The front chainring here is a 48T. I believe it's 46 tooth on the previous one, so that's actually an expanded gearing range, which is pretty nice to see. And something I'm also noticing is this time we'll have a little bash guard for the derailleur. Adds a little bit of extra security and safety. Don't have to worry about getting that too mangled off-road or putting on a bike rack or something like that. I appreciated seeing that there as well. Now, it is a fat bike, so let's talk tires. These are 26 by 4 inch Innova puncture resistant tires. So far, it's lived up to the puncture resistance. We have logged 160 miles so far on this bike. I haven't had any flats yet, so it's been really nice to see that. I like the tread pattern on them a lot. It's got a good chunky tread to it. Thanks to the motor's help, you can kind of glide over paved paths. And then once you hit off-road, it's got enough chunk in the tread to kind of help you navigate some looser terrain. It's also really nice that 4-inch wide platform adds a lot to the stability and the overall handling and feel. Some of the comfort is provided by the front fork. It's an 80 millimeter zoom fork with Aventon branding. And of course this Velo saddle here, which is amongst my favorites because it's the perfect blend of sporty but cushy. So I really like that a lot just for adding a little bit more comfort to the ride. Talking a little bit about the accessories, we of course have this rear rack designed by Aventon. Looks very nice, I think fits the overall aesthetic of the bike better. This one up here is the optional front basket. The rear one holds 55 pounds, this holds 20 pounds up here. Really nice and convenient. The ability to just kind of have a little bit more of your gear with you as you go. Always love that. Now, the overall payload of this bike is actually 400 pounds. So that's really nice. You know, you can load it up with some gear. If you're a larger rider, 400 pounds is pretty good payload capacity. It's amongst like the class leader, I would say. The frame, of course, is a 6061 aluminum. As I mentioned before, good look. You can get it in multiple different colors and really kind of like find the color that looks best to you. And then lastly, we have the integrated headlight and the taillights that I mentioned before. They provide pretty good visibility, kind of help keep you safe out there on the roads. Now, last but not least, I want to walk through the cockpit of the bike. We have a 680 millimeter aluminum handlebar. This particular bike that we got into review is the large frame. I actually really like the reach. I find it to be pretty comfortable. I'm a 6'1" rider. Fits me very nicely. On either side, these grips are ergonomic rubber grips. I like them a lot. They're pretty good. It doesn't feel like your hands will slide off at all, and they're comfortable enough for longer extended rides. Brake levers, of course, control the brakes I mentioned before. On the left-hand side, there is the thumb throttle. Press it down a little for a little bit of help, press it down a lot for a lot of help, up to, of course, it's those class 2 speed limits of 20 miles per hour. And then in the center here, we have a bright and colorful LCD display. It's really bright and easy to read out there when riding around in the daytime. You get your speed, you get your battery life, your odometer, things like that. And of course, this can actually be paired with Aventon's app. Aventon has an app with this bike. It's where you can most easily adjust it from class 2 to class 3 settings if you're riding on roads where class 3 is accepted, and just makes it really nice overall. Not to mention that, but it's actually a bike that handles class 3 speeds pretty well, I'd say. We'll talk about that here in just a minute as well. So again, at the end of the day, I think it's a really awesome package you're getting here. You get a lot of good value in all of the different parts and componentry, and I think it is something that sets riders up for success and makes it easy to operate for just about anyone willing to hop on. Now, I've talked a lot about what it comes with, but let's talk more about the feel. This is a bike where the whole does feel greater than the sum of its parts. So let's go ahead and dive into our testing so we can talk a little bit more about that. Now, as I mentioned, Aventon actually pairs an app with your Aventure. It's kind of nice to have that enhanced functionality. It gives you a little bit of some extra details and some metrics, which is like pretty cool to see. So once you've got the app paired to your bike, when you first come in here, you'll see just a whole bunch of different ride data. It shows your total running, like cycling time, your odometer, the amount of calories that you've burned. And of course, it's even got a little estimate for total CO2 reduced for having chosen to ride around on 2 electric wheels as opposed to 4 gas-powered ones. So that's pretty cool to see there as well. Now, the Aventure was shipped as a class 2 e-bike for us. Should be how you get it as well. You can easily adjust that to class 3. You just go into the settings, you can adjust the speed limit there. Also some other things for adjusting screen brightness and setting up things like when you want the bike to power itself off. It's nice as well. There's also the ability to record your ride. So there are several apps that kind of do this, but Aventon sets it up so you can do it within their ecosystem. You can log your rides, kind of keep it like a running list of all the different rides that you've done. They've even got some community features. So if you are someone who, when you get into a product, you really love it and you want to geek out with fellow Aventon owners, they do have community features for that where you can come in and see some comments. People can upload, pictures of their bikes, and you can kind of just find your tribe, as it were. And then of course there's a few extra things like some medals and other bonus items like that you can achieve and unlock. Now, I think it's a very nice kind of like bonus add-on, and the thing I think I might like the most about the app is it's optional. I have seen some e-bikes that kind of force the rider into using their phone as the display instead of giving you a good quality display. I don't love that usually, just because I'm on an iPhone that's almost 3 years old and I'm starting to see that battery life wear down. So being kind of compelled to use an app and bring my own phone into play, I don't love it. But it is kind of nice that it's like there and just kind of like adds a little bit extra, enhances the overall ownership feel when you are riding around on an Aventon product. So overall, nice little bonus to have in there. All right, now when it comes to e-bikes, they are of course very fast, very fun, very powerful, but you wanna make sure you have your counterbalance in place, and that is of course talking good brakes. So with the Aventure, like all e-bikes that we test, we put it through a brake test. We bring the bike up to 20 miles per hour before stopping as quickly as we can while maintaining control. Now we run this test 3 different times so that we can take an average total braking distance, and we kind of analyze the results. So again, the Aventure 2 here comes spec'd with Tektro HD E350 hydraulic disc brakes with 180mm rotors. And overall, I was very happy with the result we got. We stopped in an average of 18 feet, 11 inches. Now that is a stellar result compared to some of the brake tests we've seen of late. A few months back, we changed a protocol for braking, and since we made that change in how we perform the stop, we have seen an average of 22 feet, 6 inches for other fat tire e-bikes to come to a stop. So that beats that out by quite a few feet, which is really good to see. Now, because it is a new brake set here on the Aventure 2 versus the Aventure 1 we tested before, and the Aventure 1 was tested under different circumstances where we used to brake as hard as we could, even if it sent the bike into a skid, I did test that one back to back with this just to better see where the brakes are at. The old Aventure with the Bengal Aries 3 brakes came to a stop in 17 feet, 6 inches. So it did stop technically a little bit sooner, but either way, we're seeing a bike that is performing better than most of its peers and stopping a lot sooner. As for why it had a better result on the old one versus the new one, Could be due to a host of factors. The one thing I did notice though, since I did test them back to back, I do feel that this current version of the Aventure here, the Aventure 2, stopped with a little bit more control. I didn't feel it try to slide on me as much as the old one did, so I'm a big fan of good stopping power with good stability and control. Now, to better get to know a bike's motor engagement and the speeds you can achieve with it, we have a circuit test. Here at EBR, we have a 1 mile loop consisting of 4 right-hand turns and a small 30-foot climb. And we take a lap in each of the different pedal assist modes, as well as 1 lap with the motor off to record our speed averages. So starting things out, I got 12.6 miles per hour using just the power of my own legs. This, like most fat tire e-bikes, is pretty heavy and unpleasant to pedal, so I always encourage people to make sure they have plenty of juice in the tank. But as soon as you're able to kick that motor on, you go, I went from 12.6 miles per hour up to 17.3 miles per hour, nearly a 5 mile per hour increase. Now, I have a couple of different thoughts about the results that you're currently seeing on your screen, because as you can see from there, everything's a little bit clustered together, only separated by about 2 miles per hour total. Again, the overall theme of this bike is the torque sensor. The bike wants to meet you where you're at as a pedaler. So for me, although I do this test at about 70 to 75% effort, I'm a little bit more aggressive naturally than I think most riders are, and the bike was trying to meet me there, which is why I had such a big speed increase with the motor on. But John, who also extensively tested this bike on the range test, said that for him in eco mode, it was closer to about 13 or 14 miles per hour. Again, the fact that you can go fast if you want to or slow if you want to, it will meet you halfway, which is awesome. Now, we have a test them as they ship them policy. So since this bike was sent to us as a class 2 e-bike, that's what we did this test in. But I was a little bit curious about how this handled higher class 3 speeds, since it did feel so well going up to 20 miles per hour. I did a bonus lap where I did a class 3 turbo lap, and this thing absolutely can fly. I got a 24.6 mile per hour hot lap, which is the fastest lap I've ever recorded on a 750 watt motor. So a couple of thoughts. Number one, the bike's handling is rock solid. Oftentimes with e-bikes, I feel comfortable up to about 22 or 23 miles per hour. Usually beyond that, things get a little bit more shaky, a little bit more like vibrations can be felt throughout the bike. But honestly, this thing felt great pedaling all the way up to 27 miles per hour. And it was just confidence inspiring knowing it could handle those speeds. Now again, class 2, class 3 speeds, that depends on your local laws, so make sure you're operating it within the limits of the law. But this is a bike that feels really good at either speed setting. Now, anyone looking to buy an e-bike wonders how many miles they're gonna be able to get out of it, and that's why we take the time to run 2 different range tests. We do one test with a fully charged battery on its highest level of assistance, and again, we charge that battery back up and run it again on its lowest level of assistance. Really try to establish that floor and ceiling value for you so you know the type of miles you can achieve on your Aventure 2. Now, again, what is really interesting about the Aventure 2 compared to the Aventure number 1 is it's the same motor and battery pairing, so you could realistically expect the same results this time around, but the torque sensor makes a pretty big difference as it's able to disperse power as you need it, as you're pedaling harder or softer. And so it's just a much more efficient pairing, and we typically see better results, and that was the case this time around as well. Out on our range tests, we got between 31 and 59 miles here on the Aventure 2, which was an improvement from 24 and 53 miles that we got the last time we tested one out, and that's an improvement of 7 and 6 miles. I love to see that kind of efficiency. It's really awesome, and it's a huge benefit to the consumer. The fact that you can go a little bit further on this one than the last model without increasing the battery size, which would of course increase the cost, that's just some good battery efficiency and good wizardry there. Not only that, but it's a pretty comfortable bike. John even remarked that he was probably about 50 miles in on that long range test until he started to feel really fatigued, which can happen to anyone after 4 hours in the saddle. So overall, the saddle and the fork and the grips, they all seem to work pretty well. And then of course the readout was very consistent. It is a percentage-based readout, and it had a very gradual decline, which we don't always see. Sometimes that first half of the battery seems to last longer than the second half. Second half drains a lot quicker, but he said it felt like it kind of decreased at the exact same rate over the duration of his ride, which again, something we appreciate. Overall, Aventon did really well here to give customers more mileage without increasing cost. And now for our final test, we have the hill test. Here at EBR, with each bike we review, we take it out to a beloved local steep known as Hellhole. It is about 1/3 of a mile long and a 12% average grade. It's a very, very steep hill, not the type that most people would take willingly on a bike without a motor. but we chose it specifically because we want to see what a motor can do and stretch to its absolute limits. Now, in the past, the Aventure had always been a pretty good hill climber, and I'm happy to report that here in the present, it is still a good hill climber with the Aventure 2. Now, we do this test 2 different times. We do it once with just the throttle and then once in the maximum PAS. Now, our throttle time, we got 1 minute and 19 seconds and 13.7 mile per hour average to reach the top. And then with the max PAS, we did 1 minute 13 with a 14.9 mile per hour average. Now, the reason I'm really happy with that is it's very consistent and it almost mirrors the last result we got when we tested the Aventure 1 step through on this same hill. With that one, our throttle time was 1 minute 22 at a 13.2 mile per hour average, and the PAS was 1 minute 10 with a 15.5 mile per hour average. As you can see, they're very, very close. Now, while the performance is roughly the same, the feeling is not. The overall theme of this bike, the torque sensor making such a big difference. This time, you get to the top of the hill, but it feels like you're a little bit more involved in the whole process. Feels like you really earned it. With the old cadence sensor e-bike, it did have a way of just kind of taking over for you. You would very lightly pedal and go very quick and very fast up the hill. The only real analogy that I can find that sort of works is it's kind of like the sensation of being on a moving sidewalk. As you're walking along it, and you look to the side, you see you're going very fast. You're not putting forth a high effort level. It's just the ground is helping move beneath you as well. Whereas this time around with the torque sensor, it's kind of like you're going at a brisk walk or kind of like a light jog to keep up with your friend who is on the moving sidewalk. You're going a little quicker, you're not breaking into a huge sweat or anything like that, but like you're definitely earning the speed that you're traveling at. Kind of the sensation and feeling here. You really feel like you earned your way to the top. Now, if that sounds terrible to you, good news is the throttle is still as quick and powerful as ever. Now, the only other note I would have on hills would be how it feels better this time around in low PAS. Eco mode, I feel, was a lot more helpful on hills than the old PAS 1 or 2 was on the first Aventure. I like that you can have some efficiency without having to necessarily crank up the pedal assist on steeper hills. Overall, I think Aventon did well here to keep things similar to what we've seen in the past with really good hill climbing performance. Thank you for watching along on our review of the Aventon Aventure, and here what I can tell you at the conclusion about my time on the bike is this was just such a fun ride experience, and I appreciated every time I hopped in the saddle and took it out on the roads. The Aventon Aventure has long been a bike that we've recommended here at EBR basically since its debut, and Aventon has found a way to make improvements basically across the board. For me, this bike felt both familiar and yet new, and that's what gave it that exciting edge to it. The torque sensor really does make a world of difference. I'm the type of person who I love feeling purpose in my pedal. I absolutely hate ghost pedaling and things like that, feeling like the bike has done everything for me. I love how it feels on this, that I can go fast when I want to on the roads, and that I can have that power kick in when I really need it if I'm riding around on some loose terrain. The responsiveness is just phenomenal. Not only that, but I still think this is one of the better looking designs out there. I love the angles on the frame, the color options that you have, either this gray or the other ones that they have featured on their website. I think they're all really good looking. And even the inclusion of that second tail light helps with the looks, but of course the safety of having 2 lights and the functionality of making them turn signals. It's just really good to see Aventon thinking through different things like this and finding ways to make those small incremental improvements that do add up. Not only that, but it's a very stable ride. I love how this thing feels at almost no matter the speed. In higher class 3 speeds, it felt steady as a rock, it handled things well, and it feels good if you're just kind of riding around at slower stuff too, be it through the pedal assist or even when using the throttle. Those 4-inch wide tires really offer a lot, help you feel planted and secure almost at all times. If there's anything to knock about this bike, it's really not even about this bike, it's just kind of the nature of fat tire e-bikes. It is definitely heavy, it's 77 pounds. It's gonna be a lot of bike for some people, but just remember, once you get this thing moving, you do not feel that weight. Or if anything, the weight kind of probably helps add to that stable and secure feeling I was just describing. Overall, I still think this is one of the better total packages you will find out on the market. For less than $2,000, it does not leave me wanting for much, if anything, and I'm very impressed with the value that Aventon is giving their customers here with the Aventure 2. Now, if you found this review helpful, please consider giving this video a like, as that helps other people in YouTube find it. If you haven't yet, do subscribe to the Electric Bike Report channel and hit that notification bell just to be alerted anytime we upload new content. And then if you have any further questions, of course, put those in the comments below. We'll also leave 2 links in the description, one where you can navigate to Aventon's website for current pricing, and then one back to the EBR website where we go a little bit more in depth and showcase some of the data we've collected on this bike back there. Again, I'm Griffin Hales. Thank you so much for watching.